And hello, everyone. Thank you for taking your time to join us today in attending Shaping Your Incoming Class to Influence Retention Rates. I'm Kirk Daulerio, co-founder and chief evangelist at AdmitHub. I'm going to help facilitate the discussion today. As I mentioned before, we encourage you to introduce yourself to the chat section. You can toggle the switch to all panelists and attendees. Let us know who you are, your institution, and if the spirit moves you, something that you're looking to get out of the webinar today. Also, just a quick note on questions and answers. We will definitely leave time for discussion and Q&A at the end, but also note you may ask questions at any time in the chat section, either to panelists only or to everyone, and we'll hope to cover as many as possible, time permitting. Our leaders in today's webinar are Katie Condon. She's the Executive Director of Admissions and Enrollment Marketing in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions at the University of West Florida, and Mandi Lagergren. She's the Associate Director of Operations and Systems in the Office of Undergrad Admissions at UWF. I'll pass the mic now to Katie and Mandi to allow them the opportunity to introduce themselves.
Hi, this is Mandi, and I have to give props to Kirk for actually saying my last name correctly. So I know
I got it, Mandi.
You got it. You got it. As he said, I'm the Associate Director of Systems and Operations in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. I basically oversee all transfer application processing and articulation, freshman application processing, as well as CRM and communication platforms, and any other systems that we use in our office.
And my name is Katie Condon. I'm the Executive Director over Admissions, and besides overseeing the operations, our office also includes freshman and transfer recruitment, new student orientation, and visit experience.
Great. Thanks, Katie and Mandi. And we've got a great show for you today. And as we get started, I'd like to set the stage for what you're going to learn about today. Data has shown that the academic profile of students as they enter college, among other important factors, heavily influences retention and graduation rates. The Office of Undergraduate Admissions at the University of West Florida saw this as an opportunity to innovate their recruitment and enrollment efforts. And Katie and Mandi are here to explain how they identified and implemented new technologies that showed tremendous impact at the university and state level, including a 6.7% increase in first-year retention rates. So now it's time for the stars of our show. Passing the mic back to you, Katie and Mandi.
All right. So hi, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. We are really excited to be here. My colleague Mandi and I are here to share some of the admission strategies that we use to positively influence retention rates of our first-year students. As you all know, retention takes a village. There's no silver bullet to moving the needle when it comes to retention, and it takes almost every department on campus doing something in order to really affect retention rates. The focus of this presentation, we're going to focus on how admissions was able to do our part in moving retention. So first things first, let's go over the agenda. We're going to go over the challenges UWF was facing at the time, what we found out through our retention study, the goals we set, the strategies we implemented, and the impact on recruitment, enrollment, and ultimately retention. So before we dive in, we need to tell you a little bit about our institution. The University of West Florida is a mid-sized regional comprehensive institution. We're located all the way west in the Panhandle in Pensacola, Florida. To kind of give you an idea, we're about 2.5 hours from New Orleans. So we're in the part of the Panhandle, Central Time Zone. A lot of people don't know that there's a Central Time Zone in Florida unless you live in it. So we're much different than the South Florida area. We were founded in 1963, so we're a relatively young institution. We have approximately 13,000 students, 9,500 are undergrad, and 3,500 are grad. We offer a little bit over 70 undergraduate and graduate programs, and some of our flagship programs include cybersecurity, marine biology, archaeology. Kind of moving a little bit more about the institution. We're ranked number 2 in our state performing metrics. We have 12 universities in our system. Our economic impact locally is about $1 billion. We're in Division II, Gulf South Conference. We're the only Division II school in our state system. All the other ones are Division I. We got to give a shout out to our football team who won the national championship this year, and it's only our 4th year having the football team, so we're really stoked about that. And I think that's about it for the institution. We're going to get started on some of the challenges. So our story begins when higher ed was on the cusp in 2016, when higher ed was on the cusp of serving the new generation of students. Ed tech was booming, and in the state of Florida, we had been recently introduced to a new funding model. During that time, UWF was facing three main challenges in meeting enrollment goals. Not enough staff or time resources. There was also the rapid shift again in changing with the generation and the technology and systems, and then of course the introduction of the state performance metrics. So let's start off with everyone's favorite higher ed challenge: limited staff resources and time. So at the time, we were spending a lot of time and money on predictive modeling, student search, and direct marketing initiatives. We have been exhausting staff hours trying to reach out to our prospects and admits. Everyone's familiar with the admissions bell curve. So, there's three types of students that we're trying to reach out to: those that never plan to attend, those that are on the fence, and those that definitely plan to attend. And in admissions, we want to focus on the number two, those that are on the fence. We want to focus our efforts on those students. So even when we had predictive modeling, it was still challenging for us to figure out who was in stage 2 or who was in the second population, the on the fence population. We had been doing calling campaigns, but we were beginning to see that they weren't really producing the results we were used to. Students weren't answering their phones, they weren't returning the calls, and they didn't have their voicemail set up. So there were new things we were seeing coming in with the new generation. And despite all of our exhausting efforts, we were still only able to come up with 3 to 4% response rates, and we weren't really having engaging conversations with our students. We really needed something new. The old ways weren't working. And our university wanted us to come up with some innovative ways to overcome the challenges. However, with the caveat of not increasing a budget, which of course is not very easy. Okay, the second major challenge that we were facing is the new generation and the rapid changing in technology and systems. The right now generation was coming through. They had shorter attention spans, and we were struggling with how could we reach them. And then in addition, we had lots of new technology and systems being introduced in admissions in higher ed in general, and we were really having trouble trying to figure out which one would best suit us and finding what they actually do and don't do. And so it was a struggle for us to kind of navigate what would work best for our institution. Going on to the last challenge, the most daunting one, was that our state implemented performance-based metrics. So in the state of Florida, prior to this, the state budgets allocated to the state universities had been based on the number of FTE, or the full-time enrolled, and it was really measured by quantity. So we have been focused on get as many people in as you can, get them in, so we can get budget to focus on our institution. When they changed to performance-based metrics, they decided that they're going to measure us on 10 different metrics or measurements. And those include, I'm not going to go through all of them, but those included things like graduation rate, and still include, graduation rate, first-year retention rate, access rate, which is the percentage of Pell-eligible students that are enrolled, degrees awarded in strategic areas of emphasis, the percentage of your students that are employed after graduation or that are in a professional school, et cetera, et cetera. So the focus really moved from how many students do you have to more of a student success measurement, which was a huge pivot for a regional institution such as UWF. So as a result of all of this, the president developed a metric task force, and it included bringing together several different offices in areas from across the campus, academic affairs, student accounts, all different areas were brought together, and the president tasked each of us with influencing specific metrics in order to positively move the needle forward for metrics. So in doing this, the admissions objective, for us at least, we had three things that we could influence. We were going to work on influencing retention rate, access rate, and graduation rate. But for the purposes of this presentation, we are going to focus on the strategies that we use for retention rate. And once the task force was assembled, we started to dig into the data. which is my favorite thing to do personally. And in order to do that, we conducted a retention study. We looked at a lot of different data elements, and we analyzed the applicant profiles to determine which data points or attributes were common in predicting higher retention rates from an admission standpoint prior to enrollment, things that we could look at before they actually get here to kind of set the institution up for a student that was the most optimal to be successful here. So the findings of the retention study. The retention study basically distinguished two main factors that had the most influence on retention rates. And for us, those were the admit date, the date the student was admitted, and the academic profile of the student. We divided the admit date into two separate areas. There was the December 1st priority deadline, which we called the pre-December admits. And then, of course, the students admitted after the priority December deadline, which we're going to call the post-December admits. For the academic profile, or academic tier is what we called it, we calculated, the academic tier was a calculation score that included looking at the highest ACT or SAT scores in combination with high school GPA. And from there, a tier was assigned to each of the students. So the tiers range 1 through 5, 1 being the highest academic performer, and then 5 being the lowest. Now, mind you, again, these are all students that are admissible to the institution. We're just trying to give them an academic profile based on our admission criteria at that time. So as you can see from the graph, on the retention study findings, the students that fell into academic tiers 1 through 3, the pre-December admits, which are in the dark blue. So if you're looking at tier 1, which is the first set on your left, you would see that the pre-December 1 admits are in the dark blue. Those that were admitted pre-December 1 and were in tier 1 had a 97% retention rate. So moving to those that were tier 1 but were admitted after the December 1 admissions date, they had an 88% retention rate, and then so on and so on. So we go to tier 2. Tier 2 is very similar between the different admissions dates, but clearly when you move to tier 3, you can see a more significant difference in those admitted before December and those admitted after December. Given these findings, we knew that we needed to increase the number of students in tiers 1 through 3 admitted prior to December. However, when we looked at our makeup of our class, and we assigned all of them a tier, we realized that it was almost a 50-50 split. And as you can see, again, we really like light blue and dark blue bar graphs, by the way, just so you know. All of ours are the same. If you're looking at the bottom, which is the 52%, which is tiers 1 through 3, it was almost the same as the amount of tiers 4 and 5. So that's not going to give us the results that we're looking for. However, by looking at this, we knew that we could positively impact retention if we did two things. At the very least, if we could at least increase the number of tiers 1 through 3 and decrease the numbers of tiers 4 and 5, regardless of when they're admitted, we know we can make an impact, right? That would definitely do something. But we knew if we could increase the number of students enrolled in the top tiers, tiers 1 through 3, and are admitted prior to December, we would really, really, really have a positive impact on first-year retention rates. Okay, so then the next thing we did was obviously outline goals. Our goals were to increase the percentage of students enrolled in upper tiers, admitted before December 1, and flip the proportion of the class to 70% of the class making up tiers 1 through 3, and then 30% of the class representing tiers 4 and 5. And we were supposed to do this without increasing budget or staff hours. And in the meantime, we wanted to increase response rates. So easy, right? No big deal. Problem solved. It'll be super easy for us. For the strategy, moving on to the strategies, we divided the strategies into two areas, as most admissions people would do. We combined search and app gen together. But for search and app gen, we had a couple of strategies, and then for yield, we had some strategies. So I'm gonna start with search and app gen, and then I'm gonna hand it to Mandi for yield. So the first thing we did for search and app gen is we implemented a closed social media platform, and it's called Zini. And I know there's a lot of different vendors out there, but we chose Zini at the time, and because we knew the generation was changing. Social media platforms were gaining popularity as the way that this new generation preferred to consume information, in particular video. So YouTube, I know my kids constantly watch YouTube to get all their information. It doesn't work with me, but that was the way that students were consuming their information, and we really wanted to kind of meet them there. So we decided to take a leap. It was a big leap. We ditched all of our direct marketing, so all of our fulfillment marketing, all the money we were spending on direct marketing. We said we're going to put into this Zini platform. So we were hoping to use this platform for search, not only for search, but also to generate apps. So the video platform was and still is the way for all of our prospective students, applicants, and admitted students to kind of learn about the institution. Instead of handing them view books or giving them pearls or personalized websites, we knew that this generation really wanted to see through the eyes of the student at UWF and through videos. So we really pushed this platform. So all of our prospects, inquiries, applicants, every point in the funnel, the admissions funnel, we encouraged them to download the Zini app and join the UWF community. And we had our student tour guides, which we call stars here. I know a lot of people call them ambassadors. We call them stars. Our stars were tasked with uploading videos of experiences they were having on campus. It was 45 seconds. That's all they had to say, hey, look, I'm here on campus. I'm at this X event. Check it out, stuff like that. And the students would start talking about them. As I mentioned before, we replaced the traditional way of informing students about campus through view books, mailers, that sort of thing. We really thought this is going to be the way that students find out what life is like as a UWF student. When we dropped the excess marketing, we were able to save postage, print, and a lot of trees. So it was kind of a win-win for us when we took this route. And like I said before, people are always asking, budget. Budget's always a question in higher ed, especially at public institution. I imagine private schools have similar issues, but we were able to kind of swap out the money that we were spending on all these direct marketing efforts and put that money towards this specific platform. So the second strategy we implemented for the search and app gen portion was we implemented the priority scholarship deadline. We made it a big deal. These are the pre-December admits. We knew that we needed, in order to get more people to enroll, you have to have more people apply at the top of the funnel. So we knew that we needed more applicants in tiers 1 through 3 that are admitted before December. So we purchased our names, ACT and SAT names, based on those parameters for tiers 1 through 3, and we branded these students as Argo Elites. We sent out, we gave priority consideration for scholarships to our Argo Elites. We sent out some communication. We sent out a parent letter saying, oh, this is so great, your student's been selected as an Argo Elite. Make sure they apply before December so they can get scholarships. Sent out some postcards, limited postcards. I mean, we really pushed through our different platforms, apply before this period of time, before December 1. And from here, Mandi's going to talk to you about some of the yield strategies.
Okay, I'm going to let Katie take a breather there, and I'm going to kind of take over and talk about yield. So we came up with 2 different yield strategies. Once all the studies and research and AppGen were done, that's where we decided to put all of our focus. So our 2 yield strategies were creating admitted student events focused on our Argo Elites, and then introducing an AI chatbot. So first, strengthening our admitted student events. The first thing we did was develop a President's Scholarship competition. So this competition, we really roll out the red carpet for both the students and the parents. We invite our top tier students to come to campus, and they compete for the full ride. As we all know, getting students to visit campus increases their likelihood of enrolling. We also, while the students are competing, offer a variety of question and answer sessions for the parents, which allow them to become a little bit more familiar and comfortable with UWS. The parents really, really love this, and I know that some of our divisions across campus like answering questions just to parents, and then also having the kids in the room. You know, when you're talking to housing, parents want to hear one thing and students want to hear another. So that's been really, really beneficial. Along with the President's Scholarship Competition, which we don't, honestly, as many students that come, we do not give out very many scholarships. It's just truly getting them to campus, letting them talk to our honors coordinators and things like that. But along with that, we also implemented a special Argo Elite orientation and then a special Argo Elite admitted student event. Really, we just did anything we could to make this group of students and parents feel special. The next avenue we took was implementing our AI chatbot, and his name is Argie, and we love Argie. One of the unique opportunities the AI chatbot allows for us is to really save staff time and energy, and as Katie mentioned earlier, that was the #1 priority. Instead of throwing a wide net and calling every single student, we can now send text messages. The text messages we send, in some instances, provide the students a chance to request a callback. This way, we are only reaching out to those students that truly want a phone call. Instead of calling 500 students, we're calling 35, and those 35 students are expecting a phone call back. So they're going to answer the phone, or they're either going to call us back one way or another. So there's no more throwing of the wide nets. Also with this, we're able to allow the students an opportunity to take actions on their applications, such as even canceling. Canceling an application can be a task that high school students don't feel comfortable doing. Either they don't feel comfortable doing it or they just don't want to call and do it. You know how high school students can be. So I know if I was a high school student and I needed to cancel my application, I would have a really hard time calling an admission counselor that I have been working with and requesting to have my application canceled. It would be an awkward conversation for me. So by allowing them the ability to cancel his or her application effortlessly, it allows our staff, again, to be able to continue to narrow the focus of the students that are sitting on the fence. We're able to better identify them. If those students truly don't want to come and they're not coming, let's move them to the side, wish them their best, and move on to the students that are on the fence. Another time saver with Argie is that he has the ability to answer the questions asked by students through text message. They can send Argie a random text message, or he can respond to a text that we have sent out. As Katie will show you in an upcoming slide, Argie is quite efficient at answering questions and typically has to escalate very few questions to staff members to answer. And of course, for me, one of my favorite parts about Argie is that he's super quick and easy to create and send text messages for, and it is by far the easiest platform that we use. So, like I said, we truly love Argie. I'm going to show you just a couple examples of text messages that we have sent. The first one is a push to register for orientation. So at our school, we don't require a deposit. So orientation is the first thing students have to pay for that we use as an indicator for enrollment. So we really push orientation registration. As you can see, this text message is simple, but it's fun. It's kind of, you know, hitting that high school generation. But this one also allows for responses, and that's the big key. In this particular campaign, we offered them the ability to let us know that they planned to come, which was the first response. They could press 1. I plan to confirm my admission and register, and they get a big happy Oprah saying we can't wait to see them at orientation. If they press 2, they have the ability to cancel their application. We let them know that we're sad to see them go, but we always wish them their best. And then number 3 allows for the opportunity for them to ask for an admission counselor to call them back. This allows the ability to reach out to the students, again, that only need to talk to someone. And then it also allows me, it's very easy for me to go pull those names out of the report and send them to our admissions reps, and they give them the call back. So this is one of my favorite ones that we send. I like, when I send something like this, I like to go back in and read Argie's conversations, because a lot of the students will respond favorably to these kinds of messages. So on this particular one, we sent it multiple times, but on this one, we had a response rate of 34%. Now we know that the students are all seeing the text message. Very few students just ignore a text message and don't even open it. But they see it, most of them see it, and then 34% of them responded to it. So as we all know, very few students open an email, much less take the time to respond to an email. So this is a really successful campaign for us. The next slide will show you is an on-campus housing slide, text message. So on this one, we partnered with our housing department because we know that students that live on campus have higher retention rates and typically higher GPAs. So we want to get those Argo elites on campus. So this quick campaign, it didn't ask for a response. It was just a cute way to nudge students to look closely at our housing options. We did have other housing campaigns that allowed for callbacks by the housing staff, but like I said, this was just a quick and dirty text message that we sent out with a link. We have a lot of options now for students, different housing options and learning communities, and that link explained all of that to them.
And just to kind of add in, for the Argo elites, they have a specific living spot on campus. So when Argie was sending text messages to them, we said, hey, guess what? As an Argo elite, you get an exclusive living community. And Argie was chatting with them back and forth about that. And a lot of these messages, though they seem generic, we had some that tapered off specific for Argo elite admits. So we knew they were getting like a little bit of a different taste of that message that's catered directly at that population.
Yeah, and that's another beauty about Argie is that you can truly send messages to people that need the messages. You're not just, so we sent this message did not go to any students that had already registered for housing. We pulled them out. So it makes the student realize, feel like Argie's talking more and more to them. If Argie was sending blanket messages out that for orientation registration and they've already registered, then it kind of loses its luster. And the platform for Argie makes it very easy to fine-tune that, to fine-tune the populations. So did this housing discussion help our yield? Well, the year we implemented Argie, the year we had Argie start helping with the housing was the first time in 3 years that we were actually full in housing. And so that was a very big deal because we'd had, trouble. We're a local school, a lot of kids, regional school, a lot of kids live nearby. They decide they just want to stay at home, save some money. So sometimes it's hard to fill our dorms, but this was the first time that we were actually able to fill them. And we feel like, and so does the housing office, that Argie had a big part in that endeavor. So as you can see, Argie's been a great, sweet success for us. I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Katie, who's going to share some more results of all of these strategies that were implemented.
Okay, so the staffing impact, we mainly kind of touched on it, but just to kind of give you an idea, before we implemented the chatbot, whether we were reaching out to Argo elites or not, the staff were spending 25 to 30% of their time trying to reach students via emails or calls. So Argie ended up saving us over 65 staff hours, and 99% of our messages were handled by Argie, so only 62 were escalated that first year at least. And this really, again, allowed our staff to focus on working with the students that really wanted the one-on-one attention. A lot of time those were Argo elite students that we were working with, but we also were able to provide excellent customer service because we had, Argie was 24/7 around the clock, and he was chatting with the Argo elites, and so we were able to go ahead and move him through that, and they were able to get their questions answered in a very timely fashion that, before we wouldn't have been able to do. We could have easily lost those admitted students because they weren't getting the personal attention. Being a regional institution, we struggle. We have the University of Florida in our system. We have FSU. We have some huge, huge schools, USF. And so, we really have to pay attention to Argo elites in all of our student populations in order to really get them on board with seeing themselves on our campus. In addition to the incredible Argie response rate we saw, the Zini platform also kind of exceeded our expectations. we posted 181 student videos were posted that year, and we had over 90,000 views, and then we had over 7,300 chats going on between the students, not between our staff necessarily, but between the students on the platform. They were deciding on orientation together. They were deciding on roommates together, and so that really, helped kind of reinforce the student engagement outside of what we were doing. It was an organic way for students to be able to meet each other before getting here. And so for those of you that do use the open social media accounts, Facebook, so on and so on, this type of engagement is pretty impressive for a social platform, especially for a closed social platform. So the impact on enrollment, again, we're going to go back to focusing on our target population, which is, again, tiers 1 through 3, pre-December admit. So this graph is specifically focused on that population only. So not only were we able to increase the number of applications by 63%, the yield of these students, which again, big portion of that was Argie. Again, we're getting their questions answered. They're engaging with the chatbot. They're feeling comfortable. They're getting their questions answered. We saw a 15% increase in the yield of that population over the past couple of years, so which was huge.
Zini, do you mind if I pause for a second?
Yes, sure.
We just had a question just came in about, you had mentioned how Argie had saved considerable staff time and the amount of messages that were handled automatically. And there's a question that came in about how you're looking at measuring that staff time. And did you have to have various types of campus involvement or buy-in that made that effective?
So, yes. As far as campus involvement, yes, we have a buy-in. Our financial aid office, if there's a question that needs to be escalated to financial aid, they get an email. And then when they respond to that email, it looks as though Argie's texting the student back, which is really cool. Same with student accounts, and the registrar's office, I believe, receives emails, which are technically text messages from the students. So there is definitely a bit of buy-in from across campus. But honestly, we have kind of an Argo Central that is like a customer service where the students can come in and ask questions about financial aid, registrar, and things such as that. Since we've implemented Argie, it has been incredibly quiet up there. We get very few students that come in and ask questions or come in upset or anything like that. So on the buy-in initially might have been, okay, well, here's another email I have to answer, but everybody is truly seeing how much time it's saving their staff hours too. So it's been very, very successful, but you definitely have to have the initial buy-in. But like I said, in the end, it really pays off. Yeah, and I think that Argie guides students through the FAFSA, and that was a huge thing for financial aid. Was all on board about that. They, and then in enrollment management, we work super close with financial aid in the registrar's office. So we did get buy-in from them easily, but other entities, as they've seen what the chatbot can do, and we presented it to them, we're getting, each year we get more and more buy-in from other departments across campus and getting their questions answered as well. I think it asked about how we calculated, and I actually believe AdmitHub helped us calculate that based on 30-second phone calls versus the message.
Yep. So basically, Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, when we look at the staff savings or the amount of time it would take typically for a staff member to respond to an incoming email, for example, we will we'll basically average it at 30 seconds to a minute for a response time per email, looking at the number of incoming questions, and then figuring out the calculation from there as to the total number of staff hours that were saved. Which tends to be pretty amazing when you consider over 99% of these incoming questions can be automatically handled.
Right. I mean, at first, and I know a lot of you guys use your chatbots, but at first, you got to build the knowledge base. But after that, I mean, it just really starts kind of going, and you really start to see your staff being able to really concentrate on the students they really need to focus on. I did see a question, did you change any other of your factors that could have impacted those housing results? So back when we decided to help housing out with this, I was kind of given the charge of helping with their outreach and communication, and part of that was we gave the Argo elites a specific housing exclusive area. It's one of the nicer residence halls, and we really marketed that to the admitted students as, hey, you have this exclusive community, that you get to live in, and here's the advantages of that. It's also part of the honors hall, so, honor students are housed in there, and even if you're not in honors, you get to be included in some of their activities. So we really promoted that. But I think really just using the chatbot to get to the students, to get them interested in housing and highlight housing benefits, that was taking them to websites or here, check this out. We did do a mailer or two in collaboration with housing. We did like a parent mailer that's, again, like Mandi said, parents want to know they want to know that the kids are going to be safe and someone's going to be looking after them, and the students want to know they're going to have as much freedom as possible. So, deciphering those two different message strategies, we made sure that they were clear. We gave the parents a pamphlet, and we kind of compared. We found a lot of our students were living right off campus in some apartments, but there were some clear disadvantages to that they weren't built very well. And where we live, we have a lot of hurricanes, and we are a hurricane safe institution, and those buildings were very flimsy, and so we were kind of highlighting to parents those things, and then while highlighting students with Argie, the cool things about living on campus. So we had two different strategies for that.
And I see one other question about how is UWF able to work with AdmitHub to develop strategies that help them use the chatbot to eventually see their positive and amazing results. Honestly, again, and when I say that it is the easiest platform I've ever used, it is both technically easy and partnership easy. My rep would send me ideas of text messages to send out. I would use them. Or if it didn't really pertain to us, if it was kind of about deposits or something along those lines, I wouldn't. But I could also email them and be like, hey, I need to get this message across. What do you think? Can you help me come up with something? And within hours, they would come back with like the cutest or the funniest or, the more in campaign. Yeah. Not
that we're old or anything, but,
my kids will tell you I'm old, but I don't think I am. So they really help. Or what I would also do is I would create one, and then I would run it by my rep and have her take a look at it and see if she had any other ideas. When I first got here in undergrad admissions, I had a lot of questions about how to better use Argie, and because they were just getting implemented with it. And when I tell you that the responses were quick, they were incredibly quick. And with dealing with some of the other platforms we have at the moment, it's very, very refreshing to deal with AdmitHub. So again, like I said, you can reach out, they'll help you, you can have them take a glance at it, give you ideas, and then they're also sending you ideas without even asking. When they know it's financial aid deadline time, they're sending you ideas for financial aid. So there's a lot of neat things like that. And I know one of my next ones that I want to build out is kind of like a quiz. We've done this before too, but in a smaller scale. Quizzes that go out throughout the summer about UWF, and students that answer it the most might get like a real cheap little piece of swag or something when they come to orientation. So little things like that to keep them engaged with Argie and to keep them interested in the campus. And I know she's sent me examples of other institutions that have done that as well. So they're super helpful. I could go on and on about how helpful and how easy it is. Trust me when I say we have some terrible.
We have terrible. So kind of continuing on. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, first of all, we appreciate you, Katie and Mandi. Thank you very much. There was a question kind of going back to the forward to go back to talking about those initial enrollment results of the top tier students. Dan Robb from USC Aiken, who is at a similar institution, UWF, asked if you got any pushback about referring to students as quote unquote elite, and particularly catering events and communication to those students. How did you handle that?
You push back internally? No. We have seen, and in a little bit we're going to talk about how we combated this, but but internally we knew that that's what we needed to make the metrics work for us, and so that wasn't an issue. Faculty really wanted to see not higher achieving, but more prepared students really is the better term, because again, prior to that, we were in the state of Florida, we have sub-score, and they're called remediation requirements, and we were admitting students that had a remediation but needed to take like a remediation math at the local community college. So in some ways, we were already kind of doing a disservice to some of our students by maybe admitting them when they're not fully prepared for a university curriculum. But we did receive, from the local community, again, we're regional, so we serve our local students. Over the past couple of years, it's come to say, oh, you can't get into UWF anymore because it's a lead, and so on and so forth. So we did receive some pushback, and in a little bit, Mandy's gonna go over how we combated that and some things we're doing to change that. But kind of go back, so just to kind of bring everything back, shaping enrollment. So to give you the results of all of these efforts, again, back to the light blue and dark blue bar graphs, we were able to successfully flip the class. So again, if you're looking at the bottom, which is the tiers 1 through 3, you'll see a big flip in those numbers. And again, this is overall, this is an admit date, 52 to 70%, and then we've been able to increase gradually that population of students, and obviously the opposite for the light blue, the big decrease the first year, and then gradual decreases since then moving forward. And so kind of bringing us back to the original goals, how did all this influence retention rates? Since we implemented the new strategies, we've seen a 6.6 increase in retention. And we were able to, in doing that, influence the metrics. Again, like let's be honest here. Like this was not the reason that we jumped so high. The only reason, that we jumped so high in the metrics. But it was one of the most influential factors because we did see such a big increase from when we were at the bottom, which the first year we were number 11. Since then, there's been another institution added, Florida Polytech, so there's 12 now, but at the time there's only 11. And then the next year we went to 3, and then 3 again, and then now most recently we were ranked number 2, and we were only 1 point below the number 1 institution, which is the University of Florida.
And I just kind of want to go back when Katie says that, we didn't influence, everybody across campus helped, and it's a 6.6% increase. When you're talking about the metrics, one student can make a
Correct.
difference between 2 or 3 spots.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with the metrics at the time, the top 3 institutions received money, and if you were at the bottom, you might have to give up money. So 1 to 2 students could really make or break you.
Right.
So just to reiterate how big that 6.6%
Right.
was.
Right, and some of our other efforts, also we're moving through there as well, but yeah, our president, the thing that she's like always gets asked, at least by the board, it's called the Board of Governors is our governing body, and the Board of Governors constantly ask her, but how's your retention rate and how's your graduation rate? Those are the 2 ones that they hone in on that will probably never change. Since then, they've started to change some of the metrics, but those were the 2 main ones that she really focused a lot on. And again, like Mandi said, there'll be times when we're in the metric task force room and we're like, we need 1 more student to make or break that score. So it is a big deal. Okay, and then I'm going to hand it over to Mandi. She's going to talk about what's next and kind of address some of those questions about the access.
Yeah, so what's next for our freshmen? As somebody mentioned before, do you get any pushback with the use of the word elite? And I completely understand where that's coming from. We are in one of the poorest counties in Florida, so there is some poor. We have some high schools that are poor, and we got feedback low income. We got feedback recently that these students feel like they're no longer able to go to UWF. They've heard about, they see it in the news, they hear about, the students that we're getting national merits now, and they feel like that they don't qualify anymore and they go straight to the community college. So we have a big push to go out to these schools and to all schools that we can and let them know that our mission at UWF is to be accessible. As a supporting strategy of this, we offer the Argo 30. If you are a Florida resident and you are Pell eligible, we guarantee the student that we will cover all tuition and fees. So that is a big one, and that's one that we're really, really proud of. Another one that we're proud of is the Argo Spirit Award, and we pass out a few of these as well. And this is the first full ride in school history not based on academic merit, but instead the focus is on the student's experience overcoming obstacles prior to coming to UWF. They send a video or an essay. They have a couple of ways they can do it, and obviously there's a rubric, and we choose the most powerful story, and they get a full ride, just as somebody who won the presidential scholarship competition would have received as well. So those, again, we are trying to refocus back and let everybody know. I mean, we are a regional institution. We have a obligation to our community to serve our community, and we don't want them to think that any of that has ever changed. So that's what we're working on now for freshmen. And as far as transfer goes, it's kind of along the same line. So if a student is not ready for UWF, if they don't qualify quite yet, we have pathway programs now. So those pathway programs allow the student to have, they may not be ready for their freshman year for whatever reason it is. They're not ready for their freshman year for UWF. So what our pathways do is they provide additional support services such as degree planning and advising for students while they are pursuing their AA at a community college. So for whatever reason, whether they tried to get into UWF or they did not, or they tried to get into UWF and they didn't quite make it in, we offer them a pathway program. And we have pathway coach who will help them with their degree plan, check in with them while they're getting their AA at the local, at a community college. And make sure they're on the right path for the degree that they're hoping to achieve once they get back to UWF. So they're also able to come in. They don't have to do an application fee. There's a lot of benefits to it and for the student. And we're really proud of that because they're getting advising at their school, but we're also letting them know, like, hey, if you take this science instead of this one, it'll work better for you when you get over here, saving the student money if, when needed. So that's something we're really proud of. We are also in the beginning stages of using Argie for our transfer students and our adult learners as well. When I do send out an Argie text to transfer students, I tend to tone it down. There may not be as many silly, emojis and things like that. I try to make him still a little fun and quirky, but there's definitely a need to tone him down. So Argie is definitely working with transfer, and honestly, since we started using Argie for transfer students, we've seen some increases in app completion and yield as well. So that is really it. I know it's a lot of information. We've actually toned it down a lot, but it's a lot of information. It was a lot that was done. You can read back through it or listen back through it again whenever you like. You're always able to reach out to us, and no, we don't always wear cowboy hats in Pensacola, Florida, even though we're right next to Alabama. This was at the national championship game in Texas, which again, we won. But that's that. And here's our contact information. It's Katie, and then I go by Mandi, but it's obviously Amanda. So feel free to reach out to either or both of us for any further explanation. And it looks like we have about 10 more minutes for questions.
And it's pronounced Lagergren.
That is it.
It took me like 4 months to get that right, Kirk. You got it right after the second meeting.
There's actually one question that came up that we haven't yet addressed, but it was around how much time you spend reviewing student conversations with Argie. I know some of our partners love to be in there every day. They think it's great to keep a finger on the pulse of the students. They want to see what type of interactions there are. Other of our partners are only in there when they're sending outreach campaigns. But what's your take on it from a user perspective?
I like to get in there. It's not necessary to get in there as much as possible, but as I mentioned earlier, I just love reading the conversations, and I like being able to pick up on maybe questions that Argie can't answer. It gives me an idea of more things that we need to put in the database. I would say, 2 to 3 times a week it gets monitored. And then during the summer, we really do a database upgrade, make sure we have all the questions ready to go, that kind of thing. We're going to put our admissions representatives on it more to help with the database as well. But for me to get in there and kind of look at it, I definitely, beyond the texting, I look at it about 2 to 3 times a week to kind of see how everything is going. Because sometimes I'll send a text message that makes perfect sense to me, and then I'll read the responses, and I'm like, oh, I see how they got it that way. Not what I meant. So, so that it really helps to get in there and kind of monitor it, especially after you send one.
And when I go to like the metric task force meetings, or I'm in a meeting with other executive leadership, I like to show them some of the responses, because they a lot of times really don't get it. And some people on the academic affairs side, like the faculty and stuff, I think it's really cool to show them about students engaging. And so I sometimes take examples and show that to the team, and they really get a kick out of some of the conversations going on, and they get to really kind of see how the students are engaging. So it's pretty neat. Yeah,
and so much so that we're actually implementing Argie to use for further in the student cycle.
Right, for retention.
Retention. It's not really going to be our office doing it, but yeah, it's going to be really cool. That's going to kind of follow the student for the first year or two beyond their start of enrollment.
And that happened based on the metric, we call it the war room, actually, the metric war room, kind of feeding that to them and then showing them the chatbot, and they're having problems reaching students for things they can't predict. People are leaving because they're stressed and anxiety and those kind of things. It's not because they're failing, and it's not because of something that we can easily predict. So we're hoping that Argie provides some support, like, hey, how are you feeling today? Hey, 1, really good, 2, 3, I'm ready to leave. And so we can have people intervening or getting them the resources on campus that they need for kind of outside the classroom amenities and things that we're starting to see more and more of as this new generation is coming in.
Yep, that's great. And just as you're sort of looking at expanding Argie, just another quick note. I know we have a lot of our current partners on the webinar as well, and Argie is engaging students primarily over text message right now, but we also have a web chat feature. If you would like to have it on your website, it can engage students, parents, alumni. It works in over 100 different languages. It's super rad. Is that actually that's not like a gen? I can't say rad anymore, can I?
I don't think so.
I think it's really cool.
I'm showing my age. Any final words of wisdom, Katie and Mandi, before we wrap it up?
I mean, I think as far as flipping a class, I think the biggest part, obviously, is the whole entire institution has to buy in and work together to make something like that happen. We cannot stress enough that it was not just the admissions office that played a large role in it.
Right. And I think there are some studies that show that who you bring in, obviously, because if we set the institution up with the worst case scenario student to be successful at our institution, we're starting everybody off on the wrong foot. So we really kind of honed in on that, and I think that really, told the story of what we were doing. And then once they got to the institution, there were obviously lots of services in place to help them once they were here.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that perspective. And
well, now we'll have Argie too. Argie will be here when they get here now.
Yeah.
So they'll be like,
that's right.
It'll just continues in. So yeah, I'm sure we'll see some upticks in retention just based on the services in Argie that they're going to get here once they get here.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Katie and Mandi, for your time, for sharing your perspective. Also, big time congratulations on everything that's happening at UWF. Such great things are happening there, so congratulations. Thank you to everyone for joining. I mentioned before, I know we've got some current partners on the webinar. If you are already working with us, if you want to learn more, or like to strategize together and go over anything you learned here today that you could implement at your school, feel free to get in touch with us. And again, to everyone, thank you so much for your time. Katie, Mandi, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah. All right, everyone have a great week.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.